Welcome everyone to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about The Handmaid's Tale Season 4, Episode 5. It's called Chicago. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. And we ended last episode with June and Janine with this band of rebels, if you want to even call them that. It becomes very clear they're not really much of a resistance over the course of the episode, and even at the end of the last episode, it was kind of clear they weren't. They definitely weren't Mayday. You'd never heard of Mayday, but this episode has June want to break away and go look for actual resistance. I think Nighthawks was what they called them, and these were a group that were seemingly just killing Gilead soldiers left and right. You know, they find some remains at one point. But ultimately, it's about teasing the possible breakup of June and Janine. The idea that June wants to go and Janine doesn't. Janine's actually kind of fitting in a little bit better, or at the very least, she's convinced herself she's fitting in with the guy running the show. And ultimately, we have this kind of heartfelt goodbye between them that was okay, but Janine follows her on anyway, says Handmaid's walking too. It's, a bit of a callback to sort of the show at this point, because it's been a while since we've kind of been thinking about that. And from there we have our big ending, which does feed off of the subplot, which results in this bombing of the various cities that are the front line of this war, Chicago being one of them. And Janine might be dead. We do not know at this current moment in time. It kind of feels like she could be. I think from a narrative perspective, this episode does feel like it could be her goodbye in many ways, because she does have that goodbye scene with June. That kind of functions differently now in retrospect if this is her end. And she leaves June the hat. I actually laughed a bit at the hat because not because there was anything wrong with how it was presented in the episode, just because it became a bit of a running joke with myself and Tara because of a movie called Cosmos, which really put a lot of emotional weight into the hats that this little team of scientists had, where they really had these team hats made up, and they tried to make it a big moment when a character gave another character a hat. So I couldn't help but chuckle a little bit when an actual hat, a baseball cap, was used in this manner. It just gave me a chuckle. That was a personal thing though. That was nothing to do with the show. I have to be honest though, I'm just kind of meh on this episode. I don't think it was particularly bad. I don't think it was particularly good. I think it's serviceable in just about everything it's doing. I didn't really feel much of a passion for anything, or there wasn't anything really striking me as being super engaging in the June Janine drama of June feeling kind of like the one who's not fitting in, feeling like she's left out, like she wants to do more, and the idea that Janine's trying to make things easier for her by putting in a good word for her. She wants June to be treated better, and those are interesting ideas. The idea that Janine's the one looking out for her now, like there's maybe something to play with there, given that June has so often in this show been looking out for Janine, but none of it ultimately is all that enticing. The characters in this group, who we may or may not see again, aren't overly interesting from what we've seen of them. There's one guy who's trying to be nice to June, and maybe he's just been a sleazeball and is hoping that it might lead to something. June certainly seems to think that, and that's why she kind of is cold with him. But does ask for his help with the map to get to where she's going when she's leaving. But that's basically it for that stuff. And the scenes that are there are presented to show that June doesn't really belong with this group, that she wants to go elsewhere. She's mad at the leader for not taking a chance to take out a couple of Gilead soldiers, and his argument is well, this will just attract more attention because they're going to end up patrolling this area more because they know there's people to find, and it's not worth the effort. And June is just mad, and she comes off a little bit maybe entitled's not the right word, but kind of pissy about it. But ultimately, it becomes clear that this is just, that this is not an active group that are trying to fight back. This is a group that are just trying to survive away from the system. So that it's there to kind of motivate her choices, much like how the subplot is there to motivate the two characters that ultimately start conspiring with each other, which is of course, Lydia, who feels benched, and when she tries to get back into the game, is told by the other aunt that, this is a chance to recuperate, and maybe your time as an active aunt, taking care of the girls, is over, and she can't accept this. And that scene's okay. That scene, it does this thing where she's asked by the other ants in this kind of rec room, wherever all the ants live, and they're saying, "Hey, do you want us to deal you into our hand?" They're playing a game of cards, and she says no, and she's very nice about it, and it's whatever. But then at the end of this conversation, where this other aunt is essentially telling her that she's not returning to active duty, says, "Oh, look, there's a free chair over at the table. You should go play some cards." It kind of presents it as this kind of soul crushing moment to her, as we see the empty chair, as if this is her future. She's not ready to retire. She's not ready to stop fighting yet, as it were. As deluded as Aunt Lydia's beliefs and ideals might be, she is committed, and she does believe she has a purpose, and she's not ready to give that up. Which leads to her going to Lawrence, who also has a scene where he tries to recommend a course of action to the various commanders, and is shot down, pretty much. He wants to have a ceasefire where it'll show an act of mercy, it'll give them a chance to give aid to the front lines, and basically, because there's so many like blockades in place for their economic and trade, that he wants to show a sign of mercy just so that those can loosen up a little bit. And everyone shoots this down. There's a little bit with Nick where Nick kind of said, where Lawrence says to Nick, June might be there. Like, there's a good chance that, she's involved in this. Maybe you want us to help out those areas. But Lydia goes to Lawrence, basically reveals that she has some witnesses that saw him be involved in some of the cover-ups of the murders last season, and says, if you don't get me back on active duty, I'm going to ruin your life. And Lawrence counters this with, well, I need to get my seat back at the table, so if you have information on other commanders that we can use to get me my power back, I will totally do that for you. And even seems to agree that he doesn't mind throwing June under the bus, possibly if the time may come. Because Lydia's one stipulation to this is that if they get June back, who they're still looking for, of course, then she gets custody of her. She wants to be able to be the one who punishes, maybe not the right word, rehabilitates in her eyes, maybe a better phrase. So that's, it's fine. They set up each character's in this place where they might need each other, and then this unlikely alliance is kind of formed. And I guess the biggest question coming out of this episode for me is has Lawrence went full evil? Because between this scene and then where he casually brings up when he's back at the table that they are doing this ceasefire, but right before the ceasefire they're going to bomb all these locations as much as they can, as a show of strength and whatever else. And this kind of shocks Nick a little bit, because Nick doesn't want June to get, blown up. And that leads to the scene where, June and Janine are walking down the street, and the planes come in and they run for cover. The big ending of the episode, of course, is that once the bombings happened and the aid has come in from the outside to help the front lines, as the smoke is clearing, we have the Coldplay cover playing, which, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the second Coldplay cover this season, right? If it wasn't this show, there was definitely another Coldplay cover on something recently that I remember, but I think it was this show. I think this is a theme for this season, is Coldplay covers. And who would it be but Moira, who is, we know she's doing things like this in Canada, she's part of the aid, that sort of stuff, so it didn't feel like a huge leap. But the Coldplay song is playing as they stare at each other in the smoke, and we end the episode there. It's obviously a big ending, them being reunited and perhaps being able to air their grievances next episode, and Moira being honest about her guilt about leaving her behind and what June's going through. And June for the first time in many ways gets to ask about Luke and ask about the other, the baby and what's going on, and we'll get like a real genuine update that isn't filtered through anything. So that gets potentially big for the character. There's some nice things there. Obviously she's looking for Janine when she wakes up and doesn't quite find her. I didn't see like a hand coming out of rubble or anything like that to imply that she was definitely dead. I didn't notice anything like that. Feel free to correct me if there was something there that I have missed, but it looked like she was just trying to find her and couldn't. So yeah, I think maybe what hurts this episode a little bit is that it's all just about the ending. It's all about building to the ending. It sets up the ending. The character dynamics of Lawrence and Lydia, there's nothing wrong with them in the sense that, you know, it sets both of them up. It sets up that they can benefit each other, and maybe it feels like it sort of jumps a few steps by having him already in power. You know, when they leave that scene with the two of them, I thought we were going to have to go through the story of her or him, you know, using the information to get his seat back. I thought that would be another beat in the story. But next time we see Lawrence, he's already got his uniform back on. He's already sitting back at the table. We're already there. We're already at that point. And it feels like it kind of skipped a beat in a way. But there's nothing wrong with the build-up to it, necessarily. It's just none of it's super interesting on its own, I would say. And there's some possible things that the Jin stuff kind of touches on that could be interesting, but ultimately there's never really any of the trademark kind of tension that Handmaid's Tale is often good at, which, you know, the one scene we do get in that vein is maybe where they're hiding in the coffee shop. I think it was a pizza shop, actually, because there's some soldiers going by. This is the scene where Jun, you know, is upset that they didn't try and take out the guards, but they're sort of hiding behind the chairs and the guards looking in. But we've been through so many like really good the guards might find them scenes in this show that this was so pedestrian by comparison that it never really registers anything more than just, yeah, this obviously happens from time to time when they're out in this situation. But there was nothing particularly new or exciting about it in any way. Nor did it even feel like June was in particular danger compared to normal. Even though she still technically is, but ultimately we've got like a team of people who all have guns and all the rest of it. Like, it would be more of a firefight that broke out if anything did break out. So it's a little bit limp as an episode of Handmaid's Tale in that sense. I didn't get any of the real great character dynamics that I really like. Because it's not that I don't like the June and Janine dynamic in general, and you know, June looking out for Janine's been a part of the show, but I have to admit I was a little disappointed when Janine showed up again. Like when I thought when they had their heartfelt goodbye and she gave her the hat, I thought, oh, okay, this is actually a genuine goodbye, and maybe we'll catch up on Janine at some point later. But she's found her own place, because it made sense to me that Janine wasn't a fighter, that Janine didn't want to go and fight the way that June did, that she wasn't that person, and that's kind of what the last episode really set up for me, I think. So her then showing up, you know, they have the little tease where June hears something, she hides, and it ends up being Janine. I thought was just a little bit like, oh, okay. I was kind of ready to say goodbye. I'm not relieved to see Janine. It made sense to me that she wasn't coming with her, and this just kind of felt like recipe for more tragedy. It happens almost immediately, funnily enough, but it felt like we left her in a good place, and this, regardless of, you know, I can see the character making the choice. It's not so much that I think it's out of her character for Janine to do this, but I was ready to leave her behind. Like, you know, we'd kind of done this, and much of this season has been this longing for a new thing, like a new status quo, new situations, and it's been fairly well done in the Canada stuff, and you know, the June stuff's been so up and down, whether or not it's sort of nailing those feelings or not. But I come out of this one just kind of in the middle somewhere. I have no particularly hot takes. It just is. So yeah, not my most exciting piece of analysis on an episode of Handmaid's Tale, I have to say, but ultimately, I was, you know, it felt like a little bit of a stalling episode more than anything to me. So I'll see how episode 6 does. Hopefully this June and Moira reunion should have a lot of meat to it. I certainly hope it does. I think the season could use a real dose of that at this point. something to really sort of hinge kind of what we're doing this season on, and a kind of a mission statement almost, because it feels like June as a character right now is, I don't want to say floundering per se, but is just kind of vaguely aiming and hoping for a direction. And it's not that feels incorrect as to where she should be right now necessarily, but as far as the story and a drama goes, it does kind of feel like we're waiting to see where she lands so we can start building to something genuine now. And I'm hoping this meeting with Moira kind of kicks that off in a sense, where she has more of a defined goal in mind. So that is my thoughts on Handmaid's Tale season 4 episode 5. I will be back with episode 6 soon, I promise. So please let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Do like and subscribe and ding the bell for notifications. It helps out a lot if you do that. It helps out YouTube channels in general when you do that, so that's why we always tell you to do it. But you can also support us financially over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your trouble. You can, of course, go over and do that there. Mailed_fuzz for channel updates on Twitter. So check out that too. But otherwise, that is me. So thank you once again for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?